Hey and welcome to today's episode, and this one is all about motion tracking and especially about facial motion tracking. So if you want to learn how to make your eyes pop more, or maybe you want to add a scar to your face, or if you just want to learn how to turn Trump into the Joker, then just follow me into After Effects, because this is where the magic happens. And in here I have already imported the source footage that we want to track and manipulate, as you may have seen in my teaser video. So let's just drag and drop this onto this new compositions icon. So this is about 6 seconds that we want to track and where we want to add this digital makeup to. I've already imported a reference picture, how the makeup should look, and I can directly make this a guide layer by right-clicking on it and click guide layer, and in this way it won't render. So while scrubbing through this, let's just find a nice frame where we maybe see him facing the camera. In this way we can work on the look best, and maybe this is the last frame here. Let's at first think about what we want to do here. Of course we want to add the white color to all of his face, so we need to roto out his face. That's step one. Then we want to add the red parts over here, the mouth and the nose, which is 4 different tracks for 4 different red parts. So we want to track this eye, the nose and the mouth. And then we also want to add blue parts, which are 1, 2, 3, 4. So we also would need to add 4 different tracks here. And I will also tint his hair a little greenish, so a rough mask around the hair would also be helpful. And we will do all of that within Mocha. And here's the really great part. Mocha is now a plugin within After Effects. So at the effects and presets, we can just type in Mocha, and there we have Mocha AECC, and just drag and drop it onto our source footage. So what we always have to keep in mind with Mocha is that this is a planar tracker. So you always have to think of it as sticking 2D cards to his face. So we could maybe add one over here and then one over here and over here. But we can't really add one card to that side of his face, then over the mouth and on the other side. So maybe we want to create this red mouth shape out of one planar mouth track and then one over his cheek over here and blend those into each other. So let's just start tracking by clicking Launch Mocha AECC. And here we have the new Mocha plugin opened for the first time in After Effects CC19, and it's really great. The interface that you're seeing now is really simplified to its core features, so it's really useful and really intuitive to use. For example, over here, what do we want to track? We want to track the translation, scale, rotate, skew, and that should be fine. And now we have to define the area that we want to track. And as I told you, we want to start with rotoing out his head. So I'll just create this rough mask around the skin tones of his head. I can select all of the points and just smooth them out. All we have to do, because we're at the end of the clip at the moment, and this is going to be important later on, we're going to track this backwards. And if you are distracted and you are used to the old interface, you can still click on the classic view and you have the old interface. So now let's just track this backwards. Okay, so it has done a pretty good job, but obviously not perfect, but that doesn't really matter, because now I can just go to the point in time where it's not matching, and I either click on that white line, can reposition the whole mask, and then take several points and adjust them to my needs. And Mocha will automatically interpolate between the points, so you even don't have to retrack it. And I can't think of any faster way to get a roto like this done. And let me tell you something, as I have tried this out before, the roto for his skin tones don't have to be that perfect, because I'm going to feather that quite a lot. So this works fine for me. Let's just call this layer by double clicking on it and call it face mask. Now I'm going to disable this switch here. This means that we want to have it enabled for the tracking, but as we have tracked this one, we're done with our face mask. So now I'm going to do the same thing for the hair, and I'm going to skip it because I'm actually doing the exact same thing once again. Okay, and we're done with the next one. Again, I'm not doing this super exact here because I know already that I'm going to feather the mask a lot. So let's call this our hair mask. We don't need to track it anymore. Save it. File, save. And now let's just start with those two masks, apply them to our layers, and then we go back and track all the different parts for the makeup. So how do we do that? Well, that's actually pretty easy to do. We just click on the matte and click on create AE masks, and there we have our two masks. And in here I'm just going to the masks. You could hit M to bring them out, just going to none, so we can see that we now have keyframes for each frame for our masks, exactly what we wanted. And now I just basically use this source footage layer as my source where all the tracking data and the masks and so on sits, and from here I can just copy paste it to wherever I need it. So let's create a white layer. Maybe I'll just give it like the skin tone that the original Joker has here. Copy the face mask and just paste it in. Of course, now I have to bring it to the add mode again. And there we have it. Not that convincing at the moment, but we will work on it. At first, let's feather the mask by hitting F and bring out the feather amount. And while we're at it, I'm just bringing in the original footage on top again. And just once again, just bringing white on top doesn't really help the shot. And if I'm bringing down the opacity, it still doesn't look like it's a white makeup. So what we need to do is we have to have white skin tones, but all the dark parts of the skin, like the shadows in the wrinkles and all that stuff, need to sit on top. So let's start with the dark parts. So let me solo this layer, bring out an extract effect, and here you see that we have all our color information from dark to white, and we only want to have the dark parts of the image. So I'm dragging out all the white, and by enabling this checkerboard switch, I can see that there's an alpha channel now created, and I only want to see the dark parts of the skin. Maybe like so, and now I can feather it. And this is already on top of the rest, so when I'm disabling this, we are getting somewhere. So the next thing we have to do, we also have to bring up the highlights. So the bright parts. Here we do the exact same and just try to keep the really bright parts of his skin and add it on top. There we go. Maybe we just make this layer a little bit more white again. And also for the bright parts, we want to tint them a little bit more in the new color of his skin. Now we're just fine tweaking how many of the shadows we want to have on top and how many of the highlights. We only want to affect his face and not the whole image. So we can once again go into our source footage, go to the first frame, copy our face mask and just paste it onto our dark parts and bright parts, and also feather those masks. And now it's a good time to save it, and we call this layer our white color. Great. Now we work on the hair. Adding a green solid here. Hit OK. Copy our mask. Paste it on the green. Feather it. Maybe go down with the mask expansion. And maybe choose a different blending mode. Okay, and we call this one green hair. Looking great so far. But now let's start with the tricky parts. So I go back to the last frame because we have said that the last frame is the one where we have the most information. And I'm creating a red layer. Let's bring the original back to the top. And let's just take this red tone. And this is a bit dark because the whole shot is a bit in the dark. So I'm just going a bit more in the saturated, brighter areas of this red tone. And click OK. And disable it. And now I'm trying to paint a mask around the parts that should be red. And of course we have his mouth, and as I told you, I want to create two different shapes here. One for the front plate, or the front card that we need to track, and then over his chin. So let's maybe just call the masks. This one is the nose, left eye, mouth, middle, and mouth, chin. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-compose this because I want to work on this a bit more, and later on I want to make different duplicates for all the different parts. So I'm just pre-composing this, and let's start with the red left eye. Hit OK. In there I'm once again bringing in the source footage, make this a guide layer. I can quickly show you what this does. I can see Trump and the makeup in here, but if I go back into the main composition and only watch this red left eye, I only see the red part, and this is because I set this one to a guide layer, so it's only visible in here but doesn't render somewhere else. Great. So let's just bring this down to maybe 90%, and maybe we want to create another shape for his mouth just around his lips. Call this his lips. Subtract it, and then just bring down the mask opacity so we have this a little bit different. We can go to the feathering for all of those by selecting all of those, hitting F, and then maybe like 2 pixels. Now I also want to randomize all of those layers, and I can do that with a roughen edges that should just break up my borders a little bit, and I'm going down to a border of maybe 6.9. The sharpness I want to go down to get some feathered edges again, so maybe 0.1. The fractal influence I leave at 1, and with the scale I'm going down to get a little bit more detail. And now there's another thing I want to do. I want to use a displacement map. What a displacement map does, it uses a map, and let's just choose a map here, and we want to use the source footage, and we want to use the luminance for horizontal and vertical, and when we have everything set to 0, nothing is happening. But when I'm dragging this maximum horizontal displacement up, you can see that it displaces everything around the luma values, for example around this wrinkle here. And the same goes with the vertical. And let's just watch this in combination with the roughen edges. You can see how the color really soaks in here, really great. And if we go back to our source footage and we bring this red layer beneath our bright and dark parts, then we really have something to play with. Great. And as we are watching only the dark parts, you can see that the blacks are already red, which helps, but let's just make them a little bit more darker, the dark parts, so that they line up with the color of our makeup. And we can just do that with a levels effect and just bring the blacks in here. You see? We can also just play with the red channel. Maybe this is a bit too much, but maybe also for the sake of this tutorial. Great! And guess what? We do the same thing with the blue parts. For that I'm just duplicating the red left eye and call this blue. In this way we have everything set up. We just have to change our masks and paint in the blue stuff. And let me just change the color to the blue tone, and I'm just going up with the color here, but leave it at the same saturation and brightness. And I kind of like how this goes over his wrinkle here. And let's do the same here. And let's check this out back in our main comp. Of course we have to bring the blue in. Really, really great. But this is not tracked yet. It's just the look of it. So now let's prepare everything. I'll just tint everything real quick with no color. Now for the red we want to have 1 track, 2 tracks, 3 tracks, and you remember 4 different tracks. So we need to duplicate it. Call this one red nose. and bring all of them in here. And now I want to colorize them with red so I know what I'm doing. We are still preparing all that stuff, and then we go into the tracking. So the red left eye should only be the red left eye. So I'm only using this one. The red nose, of course, should only be the red nose, and so on. Okay, so I've done it for the red part. Here's the eye, the nose, the mouth side, and the mouth middle. Now I'm also doing this for the blue part. So now let's set up our tracking. And we want to just start with the top of this eye, because then we can kill two birds with one stone. So let's do this. Again, we go to our source footage, go into Mocha, go to the last frame, and now we want to track the top part of his eye. Top eye left. And let's just try and track this backwards. And we are done. Nah, but not completely. So we have to define an area, because later on we want to use corner pin data. So we need to define 4 egg points where our corner pin will get applied to. So when you click on your track and then go to the show planar surface, you get this blue square and you can define the egg points for your corner pin. But wait, where exactly are the edge points of our corner pin? The only thing we know is that we have the last frame where we have already painted this into a composition that has the same size than our footage. So basically the edge points should sit in the edge of the footage at the last frame. And depending on which frame you used to create your look, you can just go to that frame. Let's say you have started here because you wanted to draw a nice mouth shape here, or you have started here because here you can see all of his chin. That's fine, you just have to go there. And now you have to make the edge points sit in the corners, and there's a button for it which is called expand the planar surface of selected layers to fill the entire frame. So I'll go all the way to the last frame and click on it, and now you see that the corner pin is in the edge. And when I scrub through this now, you can see what the corner pin would do. It would deform everything, but it is set to the exact edges on that frame I have to find, and that's really important. Okay, so now I save this. And back in After Effects, I can now go to my red left, and let's just disable the rest for now. And in Mocha, I can do all the magic now. I go to the tracking data and create the tracking data. And here are all the layers where I have created tracking data so far, and I want to use the top left eye. And tricky, don't just click here, click here. You want to see that wheel, and we hit OK. Next we want to define what we want to export, corner pin or with motion blur or transform. I'm going with the corner pin as I said before, and I'm choosing the one that also supports motion blur. And to which layer I want to apply it? Of course I want to apply it to the red left eye. So I take the red left eye and apply it. And when I click on the red left eye and hit U twice, you can see all the keyframes that are created for the corner pin, for position, scale and rotation. And let's just play this back now. And you see that this doesn't look good at all. And why is that? That has a simple solution. This is because the eyebrow gets deformed differently for each frame because of our displacement map. But we want to keep the shape of the fake eyebrow at the exact same shape as on our last frame here. So what we can do here is, because we are using the footage to deform it, we just want to freeze the footage at the last frame. Time, freeze frame. And back in here, the shape stays the same, but now it deforms according to his head movement. Now the rest of it is just some extra work to create tracks and masks. And this one is really great when he turns his head, that you use corner pin data, but you can also use transform data if you're only changing transform, position and scale. I'll just show you that real quick. Once again, we go into our Mocha, and here's another cool feature. You now have the ability to create real quick shapes like this circle here, and I want to track that flag because that doesn't change its perspective. It's just facing the camera, and it's just the position, rotation and scale that is changing. So let me quickly track that one. But before that, we need to disable the top eye left, call this flag, and we want to only the translation, scale and rotation, and click track forwards. And by the way, as Mocha is now running within After Effects, this also made a huge difference to the speed. So what you're watching right now is really real-time tracking. So really, really powerful. And let me tell you something, you can not only track one part at once, you could create all the masks and then track all the masks at the same time. But my tip for you would be to not track too many masks at once, because you also want to watch while tracking and adjust while you're tracking some masks and some paths and some shapes. And let's say you have 10 different masks to have a look at. It may be better to just do 1 or 2 at once. Now as the flag is tracked, let's again save this, and let me just bring out something that we just want to drag on the same position. What about a create button? Okay, again we go to Mocha, again create tracking data. This time we want to use the flag. Hit OK. We want to only use the transform. We want to add it to the button. But before we apply this, let's bring out our pen behind tool and add the center to the center of the button, because this is where we are going to rotate, scale and transform from. So now we hit apply. And isn't this nice? So I hope you see that Mocha is really powerful for so many different cases, for tracking, masking, rotoscoping. You can apply the masks to adjustment layers. You can reuse different masks. You can use a track once for the transform and then again use it as corner pin data. So a really powerful tool. And now the rest is really just a little extra work on creating those tracks. So I'll speed this up a little bit and then you can just follow along and we hear us when I'm done. And here I'm now really tracking 3 different parts, the nose, the chin and the lower eye at once. And there we have it. You see, I just have one source layer with Mocha. I have all my layers in there, pretty easy. Set your planar surface to get the edge points of your corner pin. Stretch them out to the edges for that specific frame where you have created a clean plate or where you have created a digital makeup, or maybe you have inserted a scar or whatever. And then just create your data in After Effects, choose the tracking layer you want to use, choose how you want to use it, apply it, and just have fun with it. But wait, we have to do one last thing, because this doesn't really look like a cinema movie at the moment. Of course, we have to apply a vignette. And if that is still not enough for you, just bring all of this into a new composition, create a black solid, create another one, and type in the magic numbers 816. Hit OK, and now just subtract the top one from the bottom one with an alpha inverted matte. Boom, position him, and we are done. Of course, this would need some more fine tweaks. I can see some mask errors over here, so maybe I could do a different mask, so to split up the mouth layer in 3 different layers, and I could go even further with this. But I hope you really learned all the powerful stuff that is within the new Mocha, within After Effects, and what you can do with After Effects CC19. And if you learned something and found this interesting, then just give me a thumbs up, write me a comment, as well as if you have questions, always feel free to write me a comment. And if you liked it, subscribe to my channel, because the more subscribers I have, the more tutorials I can do for you, and I really love doing those tutorials. And now I wish you a lot of fun with digital makeup.